Allison Letourneau, and I'm the Associate Director of Admission and Director of Financial Aid at Oldfield School.
And my name is Caroline Blaum. I'm the Assistant Director of Admission and the Director of International Student Enrollment at Oldfield School.
We're so excited to be with you all this afternoon, and we hope that this presentation will serve as the ultimate crash course for the new admission representative. So without further ado, we'll get started.
So if you're anything like Alice and I, you're probably having a little bit of clouded vision. Here you are, in this new office, this new position, most likely racking your brain as to what role you might be playing and what you're going to contribute to the office right off the bat. We want to tell you that we've been in your shoes, and through giving this presentation once before with SSATV at the conference, we have discovered that we were not alone either. So Allison will tell you the point of our presentation this afternoon.
So the goal of this presentation will be to provide you, the newbie, with the tips, tools, and knowledge in order to make a considerable impact in your first year in admissions. Notably, we certainly don't claim to be experts in the field whatsoever, but we're excited to share our newbie experiences with you. This is a brief visual outline of our presentation today. We'll share some personal newbie experiences with you and talk to you a bit about our motto of just say yes. We'll then dive into the daily tasks associated with being an admission officer and how you can make an exceptional first impression. We'll then share some words of wisdom from the most reputable professionals in our field, and at the conclusion of this presentation, there will be an opportunity for you to ask some questions, as Karen had mentioned.
So in getting started, we should be very honest with you. Very little secret here, we were not planning on this. We were never planning on presenting to you guys in a forum this early in our career, but let alone presenting live and in person at the SSATV annual conference. But we have a really unique story that led us to where we are today. So if we rewind to last year in September of 2012, I myself, Caroline, was the assistant to the director in learning support and a member of the 8th grade faculty teaching a section of 8th grade English.
I, Allison, had just graduated from college and had accepted my first job as an assistant director of admission at Oldfield School. So if we fast forward to the present, here we are. Caroline is now the assistant director of admission and the director of international student enrollment, and I'm the associate director of admission and director of financial aid. You're probably wondering how we manage such lofty promotions in such a short period of time, and we're still wondering the same thing. And while we recognize that our trajectory thus far is quite unique, we believe that our personal experiences are applicable and useful for any newbie in admission.
So in speaking to any newbie in any profession, perhaps the greatest advice that we can give you early on in your experience is to understand the power of saying yes and how it can jumpstart your career in admissions. Allison and I said yes from the very beginning. We continually stepped outside our comfort zone, taking on tasks and responsibilities that might set us apart in the office. To give you a better idea of what we mean, we should explain the unique relationship we have with our head of school. Her requests went a little something like this. Allison, Jessica's cousin is visiting campus. Can she sleep in your apartment?
Caroline, can you work in the school store?
Allison, can you create a template for my upcoming board report?
Caroline, Jillian's pregnant. Can you teach her class while she's on maternity leave?
Girls, can you make a slideshow for my daughter's wedding?
So the underlining theme of our relationship with our head of school is that we have always and will always say yes. While the beginning of our relationship with her can be chalked up to two naive young professionals, it has quickly transformed into an adopted work ethic. We have found over time that the power of yes can provide a newbie with a plethora of opportunities. By saying yes and taking on whatever comes your way, in moderation of course, you are inherently creating multiple avenues to demonstrate your skill set and your work ethic. So whether it has to do with admissions or not, think of any favor as an added opportunity to prove your sincere dedication to your institution.
Okay, so now we want to get down to the nitty-gritty side of things. You've made it. You said yes to someone somewhere, and they hired you as a member of the admission office. Now what? At this point, the job can feel a bit daunting. What do I do? In what order do I do it? What calendar do I follow? Who holds which role within the office? Well, the answer to these questions lies in first understanding the complex and ever-evolving world of independent schools. So this world that we're all a part of, it's understanding what it is that we're new to, how it works, and where your institution can make its impact on a prospective family that might set you apart from the rest. The world of independent schools is a demanding one, but one that most of us will swear by. The type of education and experience does not come without sacrifice and a whole lot of balance. This is the life of a newbie.
So like Caroline mentioned, we believe the key to being successful in an independent school setting is to perfect the balancing act. And what do we mean by that? Well, you've signed a contract identifying yourself as an admission representative, but you're likely much more than that. You could be a dorm parent, a coach, a teacher, a nurse, chauffeur, chef, and maybe even on the weekends a chaperone. The important part here is to recognize the multitude of responsibilities and embrace them. Balance them all accordingly, but recognize and acknowledge that there will be many. From an admission vantage point, the more involved you can be in the daily lives of your students, the better you can help them with rising concerns related to retention. Instead of wiping your hands clean once you've enrolled a student, maintain a connectedness to your community. Get involved.
But let's stay clear. We are all admission representatives, and that is first and foremost what we're here to discuss. It needs to go beyond just knowing your school. Don't just know the name of your school, when it was founded, the motto that you swear by, the fact that we're all warm and friendly and really tight-knit with really small class sizes. We can all say that. Know your school and learn what sets you apart.
And equally as important as knowing your school is knowing your competition and knowing them in the most collegial and professional way possible. In this day and age, it's rare that a family will be visiting and applying to only your school. Know who you're up against and sell your school accordingly. Moreover, your colleagues can be an excellent source of knowledge and advice. For example, Brendan Schneider, the director of admission at Swickley Academy, posted an intriguing blog earlier this year with regards to open houses. He encouraged his readers to review open house data in order to ascertain whether they were truly yielding results or were simply just a product of yearly pattern. I took his advice, and I concluded that our open houses were not yielding the results we had thought. I even took it a step further, and I created a webinar series in lieu of 4 open houses. I have to tip my hat off to Brendan because our webinar series has increased our outreach by 150%.
Next most important is to know your enrollment. Knowing these numbers, know where you've been in the past. Have you been below your enrollment? Are you at your target number? A lot of schools will maintain a couple beds or maybe some slots for mid-year admission. Knowing and understanding what you want those numbers to look like and what you want the culture of your school to be. Who do you want sitting in these seats? And where do you want it to go from there?
And equally as important, know your numbers. And this is probably my favorite part of admission, primarily because you do not have to be a numbers person to know and love it. Numbers inherently impact a lot of what we do in admissions, and it's no secret that the best decisions are those backed by data. Make sure you know your statistics. Let me be a little bit more specific here. Know your yield percentages. If you aren't sure what this means, don't worry. This was a foreign language to me last year. Let's use a hypothetical to explain. Let's say in any given admission season you receive 1,000 inquiries. These could be from phone calls, emails, fairs, consultants, whatever it may be. And of those 1,000 inquiries, you are able to convert them into 500 applications. And for the upcoming school year, you have 100 empty seats. The question then becomes, how many students do you need to accept in order to fill the school? Moreover, knowing and tracking the number of inquiries, visits, interviews, and applications from year to year will serve as an exceptional measurement tool. Remember, it's great if you're increasing your inquiries each year, but if your applications aren't benefiting from a comparable increase, you are not improving. Remember, you can't enroll an inquiry, but you can enroll an application.
Okay, so if we take that hypothetical, and I think Allison gave us somewhere along the lines of 1,000 inquiries. You're doing pretty great, actually. That's a good number. But you're going to have to be out there. You're going to have to bring more in. The school fairs are actually quite the topic of discussion lately, especially in speaking about how effective they are. But regardless of where the fair is going, whether or not we all believe in it or not, we all have to be there. We have to be a presence. So for your first fair, what are some things to keep in mind? Number one, I'm not alone in telling you that you need to get in front of the table. Don't stand behind the table. You're selling your school, you're selling your product, and you've got a few seconds to do that. These parents and families that are running by, if those kids aren't just there to steal the sunglasses off your table, you've got to have a little pitch to kind of sell them and draw them in. Have some attractive things on the table, but bottom line, it's going to be you. We all have awesome tables. Everyone else is adding a new and cooler pen for sure. Have that elevator pitch ready to grasp that family's attention. With that, as you're speaking, those 15 to 20 seconds, you have that time to ascertain who it is you're speaking to. Play to their interests. Are you talking to a rider? We focus on that at Oldfields. We've got a great riding program. Are you talking to the soccer stud? Is this kid really interested in music? Do they love art? Are they not sure who they are? They're looking for an institution that's really going to wrap their arms around them while they figure out who it is they are and what they're good at. You have to learn that as quickly as possible. And above anything else, you need to walk away from that gymnasium with an inquiry. Get that information on paper so when you get back to your office, you can make a more personal touch on that family later.
So travel is such a huge part of many of our fall seasons, and I recently posted a blog pertaining to travel, and I encourage you all to take a glance. The link is there on this slide. There are two important points that I want to emphasize here. Number one is how to maximize your travel, and number two is how to collaborate on it. So starting with number one, many of us travel around the United States on the tails of boarding school fairs. While they can sometimes serve as an advantageous way to increase your inquiry numbers, they are becoming stale and stagnant. Most of us can no longer afford to travel to any given area only to attend a boarding school fair. It is becoming increasingly important to maximize your travel. Be sure to check if there are any inquiries in the area you are visiting. Feeder schools, trustees, consultants, current parents. For example, I recently traveled to Charlotte, North Carolina a month ago, and I had a day where I had breakfast with a trustee, lunch with a prospective student, coffee with a high school placement director, and dinner with an educational consultant. In one day, I helped with retention, development, and admissions. The second point, and the one I emphasized in my recent blog post, is collaborating on travel. I think this has become an accepted strategy for international travel, and it's slowly making its way to the domestic realm. This year, Oldfields decided to partner with the White Mountain School and create a week-long trip to Los Angeles and San Francisco. We intentionally and deliberately avoided any and all school fairs. In 5 days, we visited 5 prospective students, 17 feeder schools, 6 educational consultants, and an alum. When you can partner with the right school, the results can be immeasurable. You can cut everything in half, from the planning time, the cost of the trip, even to the driving. This was extremely successful for us.
Okay, so now you've been out there, you've been to the fairs, applications begin coming in. Knowing and understanding your process is crucial. Allison and I both, when we first started in the office, we sat down and actually went through our own application process as though we were applicants to Oldfields, and were able to fill out the application as though we're a prospective student. Knowing and understanding the admissions calendar and following deadlines, knowing what they are as families call in and ask, is crucial right off the top of your head. Do you have any fees that go along with your application process? Do you ever waive that fee, and what criteria is required for that? And then it comes to the submission of the application. Most schools have their own application that they maybe prefer, but we all know of SSAT, and we acknowledge many other application submission processes. So knowing and understanding who you use and what you accept, and walking a family through that is 100% important. So here's an example just to give you an idea of what we did. We made sure that we understood this page like the back of our hand. So as families are like, I'm stuck on such and such a recommendation or an essay, we were able to know what they were talking about in that moment. Taking the essay in particular, knowing your essay questions. Are you happy with them? One thing a newbie can contribute is you're fresh out of college oftentimes, not by any means every time, but maybe you have a better idea for what the application of 2013, what that kid wants to answer, what they want to talk about. Our essay questions were pretty old at the time, so kind of making that, helping that evolve and take it to a new place.
So as the cost of our schools increase dramatically and quite frankly in an unsustainable way, it's more and more important for us to know how much our schools cost and the alternative ways to afford an independent school education. Provide families with all the information pertaining to your financial aid program and your tuition. So do you have several tuitions? At Oldfields we have a 5-day, 7-day, and day student tuition. Do you have extra fees associated with the cost of attendance? Is there an activity fee, technology fee? What is your initial deposit? Some schools swear by a certain percentage of your family contribution, while other schools do require just a blanket initial deposit amount. Do you have payment plans available, and how can one submit their payment to your school? Do you use a third-party entity like tuition management system? Do you have an international student fee, and do you provide health insurance to your international students, and at what cost? So I think it's really important to provide your families with all of the information pertaining to your financial aid program. We're actually hosting a webinar on Friday afternoon in order to provide our prospective parents with an overview on how to navigate themselves through the financial aid process. So knowing your budget, how much money you have in financial aid to give out each year. Know the percentage of students receiving awards at your school. How many of them do receive financial aid, and what is the average award across the different spectrums of enrollment? What is your average award for day students or boarding students? What is the total aid held by your graduating seniors? How much are you going to have to work with this year? Do you provide tuition remission to your staff and faculty or legacy grants? Do you provide need-based aid or merit scholarships or both? Also important to know, how does a family apply for financial aid? Do you use SSS or TADS, and how do they navigate through this application? This I pulled off of the Loomis Chafee website, and this is a distribution chart of their financial aid. Even if you don't post something like this on your school website, I think it's helpful to have a sense of where your financial aid falls in your students. Do the majority of your students receive full scholarships, or do the majority of your students pay a considerable amount but still receive some financial assistance?
So in working to build your student body, the numbers are so important. Knowing what you have, knowing what you need, knowing what you're graduating in your senior class, what's your target enrollment number, and how close to that have you been in the past, we'll say 5 years. Knowing and understanding your demographics. When we're talking about traveling to meet inquiries, do you have a number of applications that are eventually converted into students, and where are they coming from? Do you have a little pocket of the world that you get a lot of interest from? Knowing and understanding your domestic versus international percentages. Do you have a cap? At Oldfields we're about 20% international, and we won't go over that for the benefit of our international students and for our domestic students as well. Depending on the makeup of your institution, are you co-ed or single sex? And also knowing your boarding versus day, and how you want to take that, how you want to maintain that as well. The curriculum of your school is something so important to know in the office, and by that I mean so important to know off the top of your head. One of my first few days in the office, I had been at Oldfields for 3 years before I joined the admissions team, but I was down in the academic side of things, and when I came up here to the admission office, I felt like I knew it all. I had the academic background, I could answer any of those questions, I really bridged that gap really well. A woman on the phone called about her daughter and said, "How many AP classes do you offer?" I flat out lied to her. I think I said 12. I had absolutely no idea. I knew, for the most part, the areas in which we offered it, but I did not have a number to give her. It's so important to know that. Your IB program, do you offer one? Do you not offer one? And do you have a really good punchline as to why you don't? It's coming up more and more often. Kids are looking for that type of program. Specialized programs are hugely important when we're talking about a boarding school. Offering ESL is really important for a lot of families. And do you offer that? Is there an added cost to it? Learning support as well. More and more often families are looking for some kind of support for their student, whether it's a separate workspace when they take a test to, a little bit more intensive focus and support for their students. Do you offer it, and is there an extra cost for that as well? College guidance and college matriculation, it's probably one of my least favorite questions, but one that is asked pretty often in an admission office is, where are your seniors going? Where do they go to school? I was asked this early on in my stay at my desk, and I actually went a little too far into the conversation with a parent, but I will give it as a little bit of advice. I wanted to say, when she asked me, what colleges are all of your students going to? Of course, you want to be like Princeton, Harvard. That's not necessarily the case. Would I love to say that? Yes. Again, I didn't know, and rather than make Oldfield sound lesser in that moment, I would tell anybody, offer up the question, ask me how many of our students got into their first choice school. When in doubt, give the power to the kids. Ask me how many of them are at their first choice. And that might be Harvard, that might be any other school, I don't know, but that's, they're happy where they are. Knowing your arts and your athletic programs as well is a huge benefit. You're going to need to talk up those programs.
Athletics, knowing what sports you offer and in what season. I remember my first year at Oldfields, I had a particular student who was interested in volleyball and cross country, and my immediate response was, great, you can do both of those. Well, turns out that we offer them in the same season. So knowing when your sports are offered when is definitely important, and whether you have any additional costs associated with particular sports. You might have a ski program or a golf program or crew, and usually those do require an extra fee. What conference do you participate in? I am a product of a New England boarding school, and I know that conference off the back of my hand, and when I came to Maryland, it was evident that I didn't know what schools we competed against, so knowing which schools are in your conference is important. Use your coaches. They can be an excellent source of knowledge and expertise, and allow them to reach out to students. Also, if you have any college matriculation data associated with athletics, that can be extremely helpful to parents. You might have a really strong field hockey program, and maybe you've sent students on to Division I or Division III programs in the past. Know that data.
This brings us to our faculty. Probably the backbone of most of our institutions. They are 100% on your team. We use them very often to bridge the gap between admissions and academics. We use them a lot in our office, whether it's getting to know their whole background. They're often the most educated, most well-spoken members of our campuses. We have to use them as often as possible to reach out to these families. We use them a lot to write interest letters rather than it all just coming from us or the kids. Some of our faculty come from, they have a lot in common with these families, whether it be mom, dad, or the kid. Use them as often as possible. You'll see the name Tom Savage here at a bullet point. He's the director of maintenance at Oldfields, and he keeps our grounds looking beautiful. He helps us sell the school each and every day, from a drop-in family to a scheduled open house. He's there to provide tables and set up for us at the drop of a hat. So make friends with your maintenance staff. They are 100% on your team. All of this goes into an open house as well, and really using your faculty to benefit that.
And most importantly, find the special faculty at your school. And these are usually the faculty who are invaluable assets to your school, and like colleagues from other schools, they're exceptional sources of knowledge. For example, the ones that exist at Oldfields, first of all, is Barbara Letourneau. She's the assistant to our head of school, and she has been the assistant to 4 heads of school. So the amount of knowledge and experience that she brings to the table is unbelievable. She's seen Caroline and I through our ups and downs and all the bumps along the way. Second is Lori Hurd. She's our director of development at Oldfields, but she was previously at the Hyde schools in Connecticut and Maine, where she served as the head of school and worked for some time in admissions. So reaching out to her and picking her brain when we can has served to be extremely helpful.
This brings us to finding your niche within the office. This kind of goes back to the fact that you say yes. Opportunities are going to come by and leave just as quickly as they came. So finding your niche is super important, and that's really going to be what sets you apart in the office.
So whether you find yourself heading the student tour guide program or running financial aid, make it the best that your school has ever seen. Many of us are newbies, and many of us are recent college graduates, and we have an inherent advantage in this day and age with our proficiency in the world of social media. In the past, social media marketing was an added avenue to market your school, but now it's expected. If your school's not on social media, you don't exist. So whatever responsibility you're given, take ownership. Find it and own it.
So to offer a bit of a personal anecdote here, this is Caroline speaking, and I found my niche through the international side of things. We had an internal move back in January, and literally nobody was there to take charge of international admission. It was never something that I saw myself doing. I had traveled outside of the country a few times, but never really saw myself doing this. But they needed someone to do it. Someone was willing to wrap their arms around these kids as they came to us and became Oldfields girls, but also in the search to find them. And I said yes. And it's been one of the best experiences of my life. It's only going to continue to be so because it's barely been a year. But I'm really looking forward to it, and it's entirely because I said yes, and it's exposed me to a lot of consultants, a lot of opportunities that I would not have had I let that pass by. And my personal experience has to do with financial aid, and I have the voting ballot box there because my degree in college was in political science, so never had I imagined myself to be dealing with financial aid. But in my first year at Oldfields, which was last year, in the fall, I remember sitting at my desk thinking to myself, I'm really interested in financial aid, but truly I know nothing about it. So I opened a search engine on my computer and searched financial aid conferences. It turned out the first annual SSS conference was actually going to be held in Baltimore in 2 days. So I printed off the registration form and I ran up to our head of school's office and I begged and pleaded for her to allow me to go. Turns out I didn't have to do much of that. She signed off and said, have a great time. So I attended the conference, didn't know much of what they were talking about at all, but I took notes and I networked and I learned as much as I could. A month later, our director of financial aid actually moved on to a different school. So we're in the middle of our admission season with no director of financial aid. So who else to turn to but the newbie who attended the conference a month ago? So that kind of fell into my lap, but I really kind of capitalized on opportunities, and now I'm running with it. So when we were initially asked to present at the SSATV conference, actually, we did what we do best and asked for advice from some of our superiors and those who have been in this business for a number of years, and just kind of presented them with a couple questions as far as what do you wish you knew when you were the newbie, and what are some of the best characteristics you've had from a newbie that you've hired along the way. And we had some really interesting responses. The most interesting response came from Jack Idem, who's the Director of Admission at Wyoming Seminary in Pennsylvania and also one of the initial members of the program, Assist. When we asked him what he wished he knew now that he knew then, he told us that ignorance is bliss and that the journey to figuring out your way in admissions is actually so important. So he actually said he wishes there wasn't a negative connotation to that question, and that kind of the discovery itself is how you learn, and I think that is definitely true for Caroline and I. So while you might feel a little bit confused and your mind might be a little foggy right now, the journey to figuring it all out is definitely part of the process of being the newbie who knows. Some other points that were made in some ways seem obvious but are so important to remember when we're in the office, that we are a team and that we're made up of everything that we talked about, from your groundskeeper to your faculty to the kids themselves. They sometimes do the best job selling the school. but definitely within your office, knowing roles, being willing to take on new roles, and really being a team player. Furthermore, opportunities such as this one and reaching out, really bridging a gap between your colleagues is hugely important and will impact your admission office for the better. Being a good listener will benefit any office, anywhere, anytime. That pretty much goes without saying. And being organized, above all. You're going to get a lot of incoming information, and just knowing how to deal with that, knowing how to maintain it, and really keeping yourself organized as you move forward. Go ahead.
So that's the end of our presentation now. We encourage you all to visit our blog, visit our Twitter account. Feel free to email any of us with any questions that you might have. But I'll let Karen take the mic and direct any questions our way.
Thank you so much, ladies. You've done an excellent job explaining things. I would like to know from you, is it possible to get the PDF of this presentation so that I can put the slides up on admission.org as well as the recorded webinar?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. We can send that to you.
Okay. Our first question is from Catherine. Her question is, how do you say yes?
That's a really good question, and I think you have to be able to do it.
There is a second portion to this, when you are completely overwhelmed.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's a fair question, and I think that comes back to just being able to say yes in moderation and being able to kind of manage your responsibilities. And it's the little things too. When we were preparing this presentation, we were in my office and the doors were closed and we were getting down to it, and our head of school came in, and it was in the summertime, and she said, "Girls, like, I just moved into my new house. Can you please come help me set up my blinds?" And we're like, okay, like, guess we'll just do this later. But it just shows her, like, we're in it and we're team players, and I think the most important thing is just to make sure that you're balancing everything, and there are definitely going to be times when you have to say no. But take on as much as you can in moderation.
Excellent, thank you. I want to encourage anybody to ask any questions that you have of Caroline and Allison. Could I ask a question? What would you say is the most important thing that you learned in the first year in the admission office?
I think I'll tackle this first, and I think it's that you don't necessarily have to have a background in admission, that wherever you're coming from before here, you can use that skill set in admissions. For example, Caroline and I were both Division I athletes, and a lot of what we know in terms of recruitment was home visits. And so it was funny, this summer we said to our head of school, you know, why don't we do home visits? That really kind of sealed the deal for us when we were looking for colleges. And so we started adopting a home visit strategy, and it really paid off. I think this summer every family that we visited, we flew places, we drove places, we did whatever we could, but we ended up enrolling all of them. So I think the most important thing is just knowing that you can, all of your skill sets that you've learned so far are transferable to the world of admission.
I think one of the most important things, I think we were asked this at the conference actually, one of the most important things that I've learned, I'm a pretty passionate person as far as going about my everyday work. So when it has to do with kids and, you know, a family liking or disliking what they experience when they're here, I had a hard time not taking it personally and, you know, following through and just seeing it as a business. So I think the greatest thing that I've learned is that it is a business, very much so. And by my learning the numbers and everything that goes on behind the scenes, it was able to make it a little bit less personal in a way, because the personal side of things I already knew was my strength. So for me, the most important thing that I was able to tackle was the organization, you know, the IR and the actions, and really treating it as a business and selling this wonderful product that we have. And that'll go on, you know, for all of us, no matter where we go next. But it's a pretty amazing community. So I think really understanding how much bigger it is than just your school, a family liking or disliking it, that's been really important for me.
Great, thank you. Trish is asking, what other professional development resources can you recommend?
Absolutely. That's a really good question.
Yeah, I think, yeah, definitely. I think, honestly, the most helpful resource for professional development are your colleagues, your colleagues at other schools. I went to a school fair in Bermuda earlier this year, and while that was an awesome trip, and the school fairs were great, the best time I had was seriously just sitting around having coffee with 4 of my colleagues from different schools and kind of just collaborating and talking about their challenges and my challenges and what's worked for me and what's worked for them, and staying in touch with them as well, I think, is a huge resource.
I would agree. There's so many opportunities for, just the blanket black and white, going to a conference, signing up for those things. Tabs and SSAT are wonderful with that stuff. And it will become a community, the same faces kind of over and over again, similar names over and over again. And like Allison said, just the constant collaboration, being able to reach out to those people has really been helpful for us, I know. And yeah, making the best of wherever you're going. Also, as far as when we talk about finding your niche, I know with social media in particular, any office anywhere right now is looking for someone who can really enhance their office that way and who really understands and gets that side of things. Wherever your school might be located, maybe there's an opportunity to take a class in the summer. It's definitely worthwhile. I'm doing the same thing this summer. I'm looking into like an emerging media program just to better understand social media and how schools are using it, how businesses are using it, because it's becoming more and more what you need to know.
And also to add to that, we invite any newbies to write to us, and we would love to include a blog on our website. So if you'd like to write something, feel free to send it our way.
Excellent, thank you. To that end, Antoinette's asking, what social media have you found most beneficial for your school?
I would say, right now, I would say Twitter. Twitter's reaching, for us, Twitter's reaching our current students, current families, and alumni. And I've been really impressed with their willingness to reach out when they feel more involved. And it helps development go beyond just the random newsletter that gets sent out or the magazine that shows up in their mailbox every 3 months. Twitter allows them to feel more connected. They can talk right back to us. Our admission office is actually in charge of the Oldfields Twitter, so we see a lot of that and how it's used. Social media is probably more understood by your students than anyone else. We use them extensively. We've kind of started a new thing where we haven't given them reign of our social media by any means, but they have the goings-on around campus. So to send any pictures that they have, any caption that they would like to share, and I've kind of tried to sugar the waters with that by giving them the, giving them kind of the credit so they can send me a picture, I'll post it online. We've had a lot of touches from other schools that way and a lot of communication.
I think also to add to that, I attended an SSAT meeting last spring at Sidwell Friends, and to give another shout out to Brendan Schneider there at Swickley Academy, he talked about using blogs, and I think when you talk about search engine optimization, blogs are huge. So the more that you can connect your school to the outside world, the more that you can increase your visibility on Google, is huge. So blog, blog, blog. We just started our Oldfields blog, and I think the rule of thumb is 75% about you and 25% about something other than your school, just to keep your connectedness to the outside world.
Excellent advice. I've also had a question about, you talked about examining the open house process and the results that you were achieving from it. Did you have to make any changes in your open house scheduling after you reviewed your process? This from Antoinette.
Yes, we actually had, previously last year we had set up about 4 open houses for this coming year. They were already on the calendar and we did away with them. We decided on 1 open house for the fall. We're hoping to do another one in the spring. 1 open house this fall on October 6th. It was a Sunday. And we did somewhat of a mock open house. Everyone was involved. It was kind of an all hands on deck across the campus, and families were invited to campus from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock and had student tour guides that did a wonderful job and kind of took them around the school to stations. We had our athletic director in her place, theater director in her place, a number of teachers in their offices, college guidance counselor in his office, and they were able to make stops at each of these places. So we did this in addition to the webinars.
But yeah, it was difficult because we decided on the webinars in late August. So we definitely kind of had to get everybody on board, and then we sent out a print advertisement to the printing machine and just got that going and sent it out to consultants, schools, took it with us on the road, and it proved to be really successful. So I definitely recommend trying out the webinar series.
Excellent. The next question has to do more with leadership in the office and in the school environment. How often do you meet with your head of school, and do you have a place at the board table now that you're in charge of a good part of the school's revenue? If you do, how did you get in?
That's a great question. After reading the State of the Report by SSAT, I've thought more about this, and we have a really good relationship with our head of school. She was previously the director of admission at Hotchkiss and Deerfield, so the amount of knowledge that she brings to the table is very helpful. So we meet with her once a week just to go over kind of our strategies and way ahead. But we don't really have a seat at the leadership table. We meet with the trustees when they're here on campus just to give them a quick overview. But that's definitely something that I think is really important, and we need to be pushing for that as a profession. We need to be there. I mean, at Oldfields, I think we're bringing in close to 90% of the revenue, and to be left out of that table, I think, is a mistake. So in the future, we definitely have to be pressing for that.
Excellent. I have someone asking, with all the yesing that you're doing, do you get any sleep?
I'm on duty tonight, so Tuesdays, no, but yes, we do.
I think the way that we look at it is that as a newbie, we kind of have to put our time in and earn our stripes. So I guess for me, and I think Caroline would agree with me, I kind of look at this as a long-term plan. So I put in all the hours and keep saying yes now, and hopefully that'll pay off in the future. But it's definitely everything in moderation, that's for sure.
We can do another webinar of the newbies all grown up or something 2 years down the road.
That sounds great. Kara's asking, who's responsible for overall branding and marketing? Is it a separate department entirely?
Yeah. Yeah, we do have a director of communications who does deal with admissions, but she also has a hand in development. Our director of admission has experience with marketing, so he actually takes on a lot of that. But it's certainly a collaborative effort, and I think it really has to be. So we kind of all pitch in. We meet weekly to discuss our way ahead in terms of marketing and advertisement. So we don't have one particular office that is just devoted to admission marketing, although we wish we did.
Yes.
I think a lot of schools would really like that. I'm also being asked, do you have mentors outside of Oldfield that are helping you through the process?
Mentors outside.
Yeah, I know. Particularly we both attended boarding schools, and I think staying close with your teachers and advisors from the schools that you might have even attended or crossed paths with is really helpful. My advisor from boarding school is actually the person that I went to California with, so they definitely serve as my personal mentors.
Yeah, I mean, like Allison said, I also went to a boarding school, and I actually am a product of it because my mom is still the school nurse to this day. So I was a faculty brat all the way through, had a wonderful experience, and just same thing, swear by this environment, and it's easy to reach back and talk to those people and ask for their advice. Like we did actually for this presentation. So yes, all the time, lean on those people.
And if I could just put a plug in here for SSATB's Admission Leadership Council, which is our ALC, and our Admission Training Institute. Both of these sections of our organization are filled with people who have a lot of experience in admission and are very, very interested in mentoring and helping those who are sort of coming up through the ranks. the Admission Training Institute in particular, is a couple of days right before our annual meeting that's meant just for people who are new to admission.
Definitely.
Tracy's asking, can you elaborate on how you did the webinar for the open house?
Yeah, sure. I'll touch on that. So we kind of sat down and thought about what we really wanted to focus on. So in the end, we ended up creating 3 different webinars. One was about a student's perspective. The second one was what parents need to know. And the third one will be affording independent schools. So just to touch on the 3 a little bit. The first one, we offered it in the evening. So it was from 7:30 to 8:30 at night on a Wednesday evening. We created the presentation, and we chose 5 students to help us. So we wrote everything, and we created the presentation, but they actually presented it. So we introduced ourselves to everyone at the beginning and had the 5 students take the reins and run with it. So they went through a day in the life of an Oldfields girl, so we were really able to hone in on all of the important aspects of our school, which was great. And then they were able to answer like live questions, which was wonderful, and we had a lot of great feedback from that. We actually ended up showing it twice, and then we recorded it, and just like this webinar, we were able to put hours on our website. For the parent webinar, this was actually really interesting. We involved 4 parents. 2 came to campus and sat with us and helped us present, while 2 called in. So we had 1 parent from in Maryland and 1 in Connecticut, and they were able to answer questions and shed their own insight on Oldfields from a parent perspective. And then affording independent schools, I'm going to do that on Friday and just kind of go over the financial aid process and how they can apply for that and so on.
And how did you promote these webinars to your prospective families?
I'm sorry, could you ask that again?
Sure. How did you promote the webinars to your prospective families?
Sure. So we created a print advertisement, and then we had that at all of our school fairs and all of the visits that we did this fall. We also created an electronic version, and we pushed that out through email to consultants and all of our inquiries, all of our feeder schools. We also wrote e-blasts to all of our current parents and past parents and asked them to reach out. Interestingly, for the student perspective webinar, we had 20 current parents watch, which I thought was great for retention, and all of the parents of the students who we picked to help were all on. So it was great. We had a lot of feedback. We even had current parents kind of pose questions to help us along the way. So we really pushed it out, Facebook, Twitter, word of mouth, and all of that.
Okay, excellent. We don't have any more questions coming in, so I think we probably should wrap it up at this point. I want to thank our audience for tuning in, and a special thank you to Caroline and Allison for providing us with this insightful webinar. Just a reminder, a recording of this presentation will be made available on the webinar page in the professional development section on admission.org. I want to thank you all and have a wonderful day.